In this video I am going to tell you the 7 reasons why I bought the Sony GM24-70 instead of the much cheaper Tamron 28-75. I started my photography a long time ago with film. In 2001 I moved to digital, and since 2015 I'm shooting with Sony mirrorless. My name is Orio Menoni, owner of Iris Photo Studio and Weddings. I'm a portrait, wedding and commercial photographer based in the north of Italy, and this is my photography channel. No, this is not the Sony GM24-70. This is my old Tamron 24-70 for Canon mount. This is the lens that I used in all the weddings that I shot in the last 6-7 years. It's a lens that I truly adore. I love it. It has an image quality that, for me, it's fantastic. I even compared it with the Canon 24-70, which is sharper, without any doubt. But this lens has something magical in the range from 24mm to 35-40, especially around the 30-35, but also 24. It has an incredible image quality, beautiful bokeh, incredible 3D rendering, and it's really a lens that I adore. But unfortunately, it doesn't work at all in video mode. And for the kind of weddings that I do, more and more the clients ask me to make also some video for them. And so I need a 24-70 lens that also makes good autofocus video. And for this reason, unfortunately, I have, with my bleeding heart, I have to part from this lens. And I have purchased the Sony GM. In this video I am going to tell you the 7 reasons why I bought the Sony GM 24-70 instead of the much cheaper Tamron 28-75. Okay, the number 1 reason is the 24mm. I really need 24mm in my basic zoom lens. The problem with the Tamron 28-75 is that it stops at 28, which might seem a little difference, but it is not at all. In fact, in order to decide, in order to be able to make a conscious decision about what lens to buy, I went through my catalog of all past weddings, and I examined all the photos that I took with this Tamron lens. And for each situation I checked what focal length I shot and what focal length change I made immediately after. So the result of my search is that I shoot a lot, a real lot of images with a focal length of 24mm. And the reason is, here in Italy we don't have much room, you know, it's a small nation and we have a lot of people, and as a result of this, most houses are small, most of the cities, even the small towns, are very old. So what happens is that many houses are small, many churches are also small, especially the old churches are very small. And small, not really, they maybe they are very tall, but they are quite narrow. Okay, so except the cathedral, of course, but most of the countryside churches are like that, are very small. And even the venues sometimes are small, unless the spouses want to hire or rent, better said, rent a villa or a castle, and that can be often the case, but sometimes they just, they just rent a restaurant. And restaurants in Italy are usually quite small and very difficult to move around, because they have small restaurants and a lot of guests. I mean, Italian weddings have a lot of guests. As a result of that, the room to move for a photographer is very small. And so most of the times we work with wide angle focal lengths. And we work from 24 to 35 most of the time. Sometimes we use a 50 or 70 if you want to a tighter framing. But so, like I said, most of the weddings that I shoot are in the range from 24 to 35, 37. And so I really needed a 24mm lens. And this reason alone for me was enough to decide for the Sony GM. Because I imagined the scenario without the 24. I mean, if I had the 28, what would happen is that I would have to continuously switch from my Batis 25 lens, which is a prime lens, to the 24, 28 to 75. And that's insane. You can't do that in a wedding. There's a moment in the wedding day when you have a little bit more time to create the shots that you want, and that is during the preparation, the getting ready. In that moment you have the luxury of having a little bit more time, and you can switch lenses and use the lenses, the prime lenses that are most useful for the shots that you want to take. But from the moment the bride and the groom leave their houses to the end of the wedding day, then it's it's sort of a frantic, hasty sequence of situations that you always have to be ready for. And for that reason, at least from the ceremony onwards, you need to rely on a solid 24 to 70 mm zoom lens. And so that was the reason number one. Reason number two is the 28 frames per second. Now, you know that the Sony Alpha 9, which is the camera that I recently bought, and that will become my main camera for weddings, is able to shoot 20 frames per second bursts. Even in the Sony roster, most lenses do not support 20 fps. Most lenses support something like 15 fps, some even 10 fps, but only a few lenses support 20 frames per second, and one of those is the 24 to 70 G Master. That was a strong factor in my decision as well. You may ask, why do you need 20 frames per second at a wedding? Well, you may be surprised how many situations in a wedding can really benefit from 20 frames per second. The most obvious one is the action moments, like the throw of the confetti at the exit of the church, or for instance, after the spouses cut the cake, they usually open a bottle of champagne, and then you have the champagne that suddenly spreads out of the bottle, and that's another moment. When the bride throws the bouquet to the other girls, another moment when the exchange of the rings. So if you have a 20 frames per second sequence, you have more chances to have at least one shot where you can at least have a glimpse of the ring. And that was reason number 2. Reason number 3 is a generic philosophy reasoning that I made. And I thought, well, I spent a lot of money in my Alpha 9 camera. What happens if I buy the Tamron 28-75? Now the Tamron is a lot cheaper than this lens, even though I paid this lens quite little for what its value as new lens. I mean, this is a real big saving, but what I thought was, okay, weddings are my main business. During a wedding, I have a 24-70 on my camera basically all the time, and I use it at least 50% in 50% of my photos, at very minimum. Probably as average, I use it for like 70% of my photos. 70%, 75% of my photos in a wedding days are taken with a 24-70. The philosophical point is, do I really want to save on my main and most important lens of all my business? I can be cheap in other lenses, like, okay, I have the Batis, which is not cheap, the Batis 85, and the Batis 25 also, but I have them because at the time there was no alternative. And the Batis 85 was the first 85mm lens that was released for the Sony system. There was no other 85 when it was released, and I immediately bought one because 85 is very important for me, especially when I do portraits. So that is a lens where I can save some money. I can save some money in the macro lens because I only take a few macro shots, and in fact my macro lens is the Sony 30mm f3.5, which is very cheap. You know, there are lenses that are not so important, where you can save money without creating too much damage to your photography. But the 24-70 is something where it doesn't make sense to save on your main lens, in my opinion, if you buy a camera like the Alpha 9. Okay, if you buy a camera like the Alpha 7 Mark III, which is my second camera, if your main camera is the Alpha 7 Mark III, which is a $2,000, even less now probably, then this lens is kind of an overkill, if you ask me. Okay. But if you buy an Alpha 9, which is the best camera in the Sony range, you also want the best lens for it, at least the main lens. This lens will let you shoot 20 frames per second burst, while the Tamron only will allow, I think, 10 frames per second, because most, if not all, third-party lenses can only deliver 10 frames per second burst on the A9. From the philosophical point of view, I make a big investment in the best camera. I need to make a big investment in the best lens. That's the way I see things. Okay. Reason number 4 is the image quality. Now, let me set one thing straight. No client ever, and I grant you this, no client ever will be able to tell a photo taken with the Tamron 28-70 from a photo taken with the Sony GM. From a merely business point of view, the 28-75 Tamron will be perfectly fine as far as image quality is concerned. But we are not only, we are not only professionals. We are also lovers of photography. I love photography, and when I saw the image quality of this lens, when I saw the micro contrast of this lens, how lively the skin of the people is rendered by this lens compared to the Tamron lens, when I saw the bokeh of this lens so smooth compared to the sort of nervous bokeh of the Tamron lens, I knew in my heart it had to be this lens. If you check the review by Justin Abbott, he made a very interesting comparative review of this lens and of the Tamron 28-75, and check his portraits, because in those portraits you will see the difference. The Tamron portraits are very fine, nothing to say, nothing bad to say about them. There's plenty of detail, perfectly fine, beautiful photos, but to me they sort of look flat. I don't know how to explain it. They don't have that pop. You will see it if you go and see for yourself. You will see what I mean. Maybe there are photographers that go after that look. It's pretty possible. I mean, taste in photography can vary greatly. So maybe there are photographers that actually prefer that kind of look. Personally, I prefer the so-called Zeiss kind of look, that micro contrast, that lively rendition of the details, and this lens delivers heaps of those. So and the bokeh is absolutely beautiful with this lens. Reason number 5: autofocus in video mode. Now, the Tamron 28-75 is very fast in video autofocus. Actually, it's probably even a bit faster than the Sony GM, and the reason, of course, is obvious. There is a lot less glass to move in the Tamron lens. Well, this is a very heavy lens and with lots of glass to move in order to focus the lens. So that makes sense. The difference is not big, but it's there. I mean, there's a little advantage in speed for the Tamron. If I was a sports photographer, maybe I would appreciate that more. But I am not a sports photographer. I am a wedding photographer, and in my wedding videos, the smoothness of transition is more important than the actual speed, because no clients will notice if a lens takes a little longer, to focus on something. Nobody notices that, but they are more likely to notice if the changes are abrupt. And I saw samples of video taken with the Tamron lens, and the focus pull is very kind of sudden, if you know what I mean. It's like you focus on this, okay, on this, then you focus on this one, and the transition is like zoom, very snappy and very fast, but not very pleasing to the eye, not very cinematic, if you know what I mean. Whereas with this lens, the transition, the focus pull transition is something like very smooth, gentle transition, very cinematic, and I love that a lot. And I use this kind of trick, the focus pull. I use it a lot in the wedding videos, especially when I photograph the details like the ring or the bouquet, and I like to focus, pull focus from one to the other object. But I also use it during the ceremony, like I frame the spouses in the front, and then I pull the focus towards the guests in the back seats. And so there's a number of occasions where I use focus pull during a wedding, and this lens provides me with a more cinematic and more a smoother and more pleasing focus pull transition, in my opinion. Reason number 6 is this button here, the lock focus button. Why I mention this? I mention this because when I use the 24-70 in the weddings, most of the time my camera is on ARIA mode, and but sometimes I want to focus on something different than the bride's face. Like maybe there's a bride sitting there and there's a bouquet here, and I want to have both of them in the frame, but I want the focus to be on the bouquet. And what happens with the cameras, with the Sony cameras, if you have face priority turned on, the focus will always go to the face of the bride. Sure, you can disable face priority, and you can assign it to a custom button, and okay, so it's doable even without this. But you know, when I work, especially at weddings, I want the simplest solution and the fastest solution ever, if possible. And this is the fastest, because with this one I can focus on the object, lock the focus with the button and move to and reframe in order to have the focus here and the other subject blurred in the background. Yes, you can do it also by assigning a custom button on the camera body, and that's for sure, but you know, real estate of buttons, of custom buttons, is always, you know, on the short side. You know, there's a lot of things that you want to assign to those buttons. Reason number 7, the cashback. Like I mentioned before, there's a 100 euros cashback by Sony going on at the moment here in Italy, and so I took advantage of it. And I coupled that with a very good price that I was able to find. This is a regular import lens. This is not a grey market lens. This is regular import, and it has 3 years warranty. So this fully regular and legal lens. But I was able to find it by searching various shops. I was able to find it this as a very good price. That, coupled with the 100 euros cashback, let me buy this lens for 2,000 euros, which is a very good price. So I understand that this is not a universal reason. Of course, this is valid now. It will not be valid from August onwards. So it may not be valid in your country where you live. But anyway, it was a part of my, you know, it was a deciding factor, one of the many deciding factors, so I thought I would mention this. Okay, these were my 7 reasons why I bought the Sony 24-70 f2.8 GM instead of the Tamron 28-75 f2.8. Now, let me know what were your reasons to buy this lens if you bought it, or what were the reasons why you bought the Tamron lens if you bought the Tamron lens. Let me know in the comments, and until next time, see you later.